For the Braves for PEDs, Thomas is the next lefty up in AAA. Assuming he performs well, and he did in his abbreviated stint with the Braves last year in the big leagues, he should be up there for a good long time, coming in for a guy in an 80-game suspension. And hopefully it is for the rest of the season. And this is really going to be an important stretch as he gets an extended look in the big leagues. We're going to find out if Ian Thomas is going to be a every third day major league reliever, or if he is going to be, kind of a quadruple A guy that'll be back and forth and a journeyman throughout his career. So this is an important stretch in Ian Thomas's career, and he's back with the Braves. And right now he's the only former Rev in Major League Baseball. But last year we had as many as 3 or 4 guys in the majors at one time: Andy Marte, Julio DePaula, Ryan Fierabend, Scott Rice, and Ian Thomas, all up in the big leagues last year. So
I think my favorite note for me and Thomas and that whole experience, and we actually uncovered this when we visited him in Philadelphia last year, that major league debut that he made was the first big league game he'd ever attended. Yeah.
That's
unbelievable.
That's an amazing story, and that's just kind of his personality. I mean, he takes his job seriously. He takes the game seriously, but he is not a super intense guy, and that's not to say he isn't competitive, but it works to his advantage because he just doesn't put a lot of pressure on himself. He's able to stay cool and deliver. And just a scheduling note, the Revolution are in Camden July 31st through the first couple days of August, and the Braves are in Philadelphia that same stretch. They're actually in Philly right now. Ian Thomas is there now with the Braves. So any Revolution fans, assuming Thomas is in the big leagues, then still hopefully he is, that can double dip that weekend for the Revs in Camden and the Braves in Philadelphia and see one of our alumni.
And his name came up, actually, one of our guests coming up on the show, as we mentioned, Jim Seip. He had a great piece on Desmond Henry the other day, making the team, and Ian's name came up as an example of a really young guy in this league who developed somewhat here in York. This obviously is not known as a developmental league. You get so many veteran guys here, but Ian did use it that way under the tutelage of Mace, who was pitching coach at the time, and then he gets that next opportunity. So, amazing story and an amazing place that he holds in Revs history, because he used the league in a much different way than a lot of these guys do.
Right, you're right. And this league is essentially serving the same function to Major League Baseball as AAA. It is a insurance policy for veterans who are done developing and have settled into that 4A type role. But it's a myth that young guys can't develop in this league, and the coaching staffs know that, and they treat every player differently. If it's tweaking the already developed talent, you do that. If it's helping a guy start his career who was overlooked in the draft, and he was undrafted, Thomas was out of ECU, you do that. So it's a good look for the league. Obviously, getting a guy back to the majors who had already been there is what we do best, but getting a guy there for the first time is really special. So it's a big deal. There's no doubt about it. Lefty reliever or starting first baseman, it doesn't matter. I mean, when you see one of our players in the show, it puts to rest the myth that these guys are just here hanging on. It's much more highly competitive than that.
And that was the best of the best from the week. Where do you want to go next? Because we've got some.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've got a laundry list here. We've got roster decisions, Travis Garcia going to Mexico, pace of play. But I think these are all things right in Jim Seip's wheelhouse.
They are.
The York Daily Record. So maybe we should break, and you've got a special interview coming back, and we'll talk about that stuff with Seip in a little while.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, the Garcia news certainly was not part of the best of this week. For the Revs, it's good for him. He'll go down and make a little bit more money, and hopefully we'll see him back here at some point. But we'll get into all of that and break all of that down. But yes, we have Atlantic League President Rick White coming up on the program next. So we'll take our first break now here on Revs Friday Night Live, getting you set for opening night. And at 6 o'clock, by the way, we will, of course, move right on over into the press box and go with our normal pregame show, and on opening night, that includes all of the player introductions, so we will carry all of that live for you as well. We'll be back with the League Prez, Rick White. He joins us next here on Revs Friday Night Live on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK.
I'm Kevin Kugler with This Week in the NCAA on Westwood One. The NCAA Women's Gymnastics Championships event was first held in 1982. In the 33 years since, only 6 teams have won the team title. The 6, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Oklahoma, UCLA, and Utah, were once again all represented at the 2015 event held last weekend in Fort Worth, Texas. And there was plenty of drama as the overall team title came down to the last rotation of the last event on the final day of competition. It was the uneven bars that would decide the championship, and 18-year-old freshman Alex McMurtry from the University of Florida that would become her team's hero. Her score of 9.95 pushed the Gators into the top spot with a 197.85 team score that bested the Utah Utes, who finished at 197.80. The 5/100ths margin gave Florida its third straight team trophy. While McMurtry delivered the team win, she did not claim the uneven bars individual title. That went to Utah senior Georgia Debretz, who scored 2 perfect 10s and a 9.9625 to win the event. Coming up, a wrap on men's gymnastics on This Week in the NCAA.
How strong is Allegra D?
It's my congestion's out of my way strong. Even in the park playing with my dogs. Go fetch, Bosley.
Allegra D, a fast, non-drowsy antihistamine plus a powerful decongestant that starts relieving your toughest allergy symptoms in under 1 hour.
Allegra D is breathing free for 24 hours strong, even in the convertible.
Allegra D, strong relief for your allergy symptoms, guaranteed or your money back. Visit Allegra.com. Use only as directed.
Hey, it's Flo, and this is my impression of me arguing with an old-timey Southern lawyer in a courtroom. Objection! You can't show my client's rates to your customers! We compare our Progressive Direct rate and our competitors' rates in one place, so shopping is easier. Only showing your rate when it's lowest. Slander in the court of law! No, we show our rate even when Progressive isn't the lowest. I rest my case! Move to adjourn for snack time!
Compare rates and save at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations.
The 2015 NCAA Men's Gymnastics Championships were held in Norman, Oklahoma, and hosted by a Sooner team that entered with a perfect 21-0 record. The hometown favorites did not disappoint as they claimed their 9th team trophy. It's their 6th championship since 2000 under head coach Mark Williams. The Sooners were led by individual event champions, senior Michael Reed on the pommel horse, and senior Michael Squires, who became just the 3rd student athlete to win the Still Rings event 3 straight years. While the Winter Championships are now complete, the first of the Spring Sports Championships are taking place this weekend in Hoboken, New Jersey, to decide who will claim the Division III men's volleyball title. That's This Week in the NCAA. I'm Kevin Kugler on Westwood One.
Hey, this is Mark Malone from NBC Sports Radio. The Revs play here. Catch York Revolution Baseball on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK.
And back here on the maiden voyage of Revs Friday Night Live here. Live from the WOYK 1350 studios here at Santander Stadium on the Brooks Robinson Plaza. Paul Braverman, joined by Darrell Henry and Ray Jensen here this afternoon, leading into the Revolution pregame at 10 after 6 tonight. And then the regular season gets underway with the Long Island Ducks in town this evening. Darrell Henry will have the call for you beginning at 6:30. Atlantic League President Rick White was in York on his Atlantic League tour, visiting all the players and front offices this week during preseason camp, and Darrell Henry sat down with him for a fascinating interview, as it always is, with Rick White, touching on expansion, pace of play initiatives, and York's place in baseball history. Darrell Henry and Atlantic League President Rick White coming at you right now on Revs Friday Night Live.
Good to see you. Thanks a lot for coming into our new studio here along Brooks Robinson Plaza. First of all, what are your impressions now that one of the Atlantic League teams owns a radio station and we operate right here at the ballpark?
Well, I think the media empire has now started, and between the Revs and your business interest, here we go. Who knows what's next? Comcast Spectacor, and here we come. Actually, Darrell, thanks for having me, and I think it's terrific. I love the idea that folks can gather on the plaza and watch you work. I love the idea that as you do interviews or have players in the studio, they can say hello and get a little closer to those insights. And there's a certain amount of magic in baseball associated with radio that now you can leverage, and I think that's terrific.
Oh, we're very excited about it, and of course, getting started with this season. And you've spent some time in every Atlantic League community, of course, every first 14 months. Here you are in York, leading up to the start of this season. What's your sense of York as a baseball town and the town in general? How much do you enjoy your visits here?
You know, every time I come here, I pinch myself and say how lucky I am to be here. And I remind myself that I need to come back on an off day so I can wander a little bit. For me, each visit includes a new discovery. Last night when I came to town, I happened to pass York barbells. Now, for citizens of York, that's probably a pretty average observation. For someone who lives in Colorado, it was kind of magical to actually see the home of York barbells. I'd never put two and two together, so that was a lot of fun. I'm staying in the historic district, and it's charming, and it just underscores how much I enjoy being here. The fact that the Revs represent an opportunity for the community to build memories, get out and enjoy a summer's night, get out and enjoy the family, all the while watching baseball, I think it's pretty magical. And when I look at the ballpark and I look at the surroundings and I contemplate the community, it's just a 1, 2, 3 win-win-win.
Talking with Atlantic League President Rick White, and so much of the conversation over the last year has been the pace of play initiatives. How do you think that went through the first, I guess, 2 months, basically 2 months that we were able to implement those last season, and what are we looking at here for 2015 to kind of take it to the next step?
First, the facts. We were running 3 hours and 1 minute for our average 9-inning game in the first half of 2014. In 2013, it was actually 3 hours and 2 minutes. In the second half of our year last year, we took that number and reduced it to 2 hours and 54 minutes. So on the face of it, we think we gave more value and accelerated the pace of play to the folks who came to watch our games. We were very proud of that. Second, the influence we exerted over all of professional baseball was really noteworthy. And while most folks probably overlook the Atlantic League from time to time in the national landscape, they certainly aren't going to overlook their favorite club, whether that's a major or affiliated minor league club. And everything those clubs are doing this year are attributable to the Atlantic League. We will continue the initiative this year. We have 6 initiatives that we're going to install. They include everything from limiting the time between innings to roughly 2 minutes, to ceasing walk-up music when players are approaching the batter's box when they reach the home plate circle. I won't bore you with all of them, but we believe, because of some of the things we're doing this year, we will actually be closer to 2 hours and 30 minutes for an average 9-inning Atlantic League game than 3 hours. And that is noteworthy. And I shouldn't refer to this without citing specifically the goodwill and the hard work that our managers, our coaches, and especially our players have put in to really turn our games into a more crisp, hustle-oriented game. It's truly remarkable to see how cooperative and helpful they've been.
And you have our manager, Mark Mason, on the committee. He's a very unique baseball mind. I know we're very fortunate to have him here. What's it been like to kind of get that perspective from a guy who's in the dugout on a nightly basis, our manager specifically, on your committee, to kind of, get his takes on everything?
I'm glad you talked about the fact that he has a fertile intellect. Mark is a very bright man. He thinks very deeply about the game. But he's also human and very approachable. And like any of us, he'll sit there and he'll say, this thing really bothers me, and he'll go on to talk about an incident that occurs frequently in baseball. Those little nuggets really help us develop insights, and Mark has been especially keen around that. Like I said, he is very thoughtful, and he has made a significant difference in terms of the initiatives that we've thought about, and equally made a difference in terms of some of those initiatives we considered but decided not to move forward with. There will be a couple of things, subtle to the average fan but meaningful in terms of pace of play. The limitation on time of conference, which we've taken to 30 seconds, or the fact that when a manager exits the dugout this year, making a pitching change, he makes that change immediately as opposed to going to the mound to make the change. And Mark was not only responsible for pulling those together on behalf of other managers, he's also proven to be very influential with his colleagues on the field across the league. So a terrific addition to the committee.
Talking with Atlantic League President Rick White, and we had the Long Island Bridgeport exhibition this past weekend, and I'll be honest, I had to laugh at some of the reaction on social media, people freaking out, thinking that this was the newest pace of play, but totally a gimmick, right? How were you approached about that, and how did it go?
Well, 2 notes on that one, Darrell. Number one, folks sometimes overreact without knowing the full facts, and even though we did limit each at bat to 5 pitches, which I think most people find artificial, there is absolutely no chance that that's going to be adopted on a full-time basis across the league. We are, however, considering a 4-pitch limit in the future, and I would advise folks to think strongly about that and how they would feel about it. No, seriously, it was a lot of fun. We didn't do it as an experiment thinking that this was going to be a permanent change. We did it because every time we try new things, we learn about opportunities to perhaps save time or in other ways improve the fan experience or the game itself. And I doubt very much, as I said before, we're going to change 3 balls, 2 strikes, and as a full count. And I'm quite certain, other than a bunt with 2 strikes, we're never going to go to a 5-pitch limit. But it was a lot of fun, and we did learn a few things that provided some insights to us. The biggest one, by the way, was communication. Mm-hmm. We briefed each player immediately before the game that this was going to happen. Players went out and did their jobs. They focused on the game or their at-bat or their fielding opportunities. What was interesting was they were so focused on that, they forgot the briefing. So there were a couple of circumstances where somebody would have 2 strikes on him. He'd hit a foul ball. He'd go ahead and dig back into the batter's box, and then he would be startled to learn that he had just struck out. So it was a lot of fun, like I said. And it was a great experience. And if you ask the players, by and large, they enjoyed it. Even those who might have complained about it publicly, privately said, you know what, it wasn't so bad. So we had some fun with that.
Well, and I guess maybe starting with the pace of play initiatives, the Atlantic League seems to have a really unique and impactful place in professional baseball as a whole. What has it been like for you to work with Major League Baseball here these past 14 months, and how optimistic are you with that relationship going forward?
Well, as you know, I used to work at Major League Baseball. I founded a thing called Major League Baseball Properties. I was there for almost 20 years. So first off, it's been really enjoyable for me over the past year and almost year and a half to renew my acquaintances with my friends at the Commissioner's office and throughout Major League Baseball. The other thing that I think has been really unique and a great surprise has been the opportunity to get to know the equally talented executives and administrators and on-field personnel in our league. What I think we've done over the past 14 months is to give them a voice that perhaps they didn't feel they had, and by listening to these talented folks, we've come across some great ideas. We've begun to act on many of those. And you're right, we have begun to exert influence across all of professional baseball. Pace of play is just one of those items, but it's a great illustration of how the Atlantic League really is innovative, imaginative, and can exert leadership across organized baseball in a way that I suspect we didn't calculate in the not-too-distant past.
Yeah. Well, and we'll finish with a topic that we're often asked about from fans, and that is the prospect of Atlantic League expansion without lifting the curtain on every project. What can you tell us about what might be to come and how serious the league is on exploring additional teams?
With a team in Sugar Land, Texas, which requires air travel anytime somebody wants to play them or they want to play any of our Mid-Atlantic clubs, it's inevitable that we consider expansion into the Southwest. We currently are in discussions with 3 communities about the placement of an Atlantic League team. There are a lot of moving parts with any of those discussions. Investors, principal owners, municipalities, facilities, and so forth. At the same time, we continue to receive strong interest and have durable interest in expanding our footprint in the Mid-Atlantic. So we have two sets of concurrent conversations going on. Those in the Southwest, which range from Texas and in some cases all the way to the West Coast, and those in the Mid-Atlantic. So it takes a fair amount of time. It isn't without its complications, but I'm confident we're going to be a bigger league, and we are going to expand our footprint west in the coming years.
Very exciting. Rick, thanks very much for joining us, and also for visiting York here 2 days before the opener. Always great to see you.
Thanks so much. Nice to be here.
We'll be right back with Jim Seip after this break. You're listening to Revs Friday Night Live here on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK York.
Security in life isn't something you just wish for. You build it with a strong financial plan. Start with Northwestern Mutual. Together, we'll design a disciplined and balanced approach to financial security, because reaching your goals is something we both want to work toward. To learn more, contact me, Dan McGarry, at my office on the Square in York. Look for the blue awnings. Who's helping you build your financial future? The Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Revolution!
York Revolution baseball is back and opening day is almost here. The Revs Express starts rolling the weekend of April 24th. Friday the 24th and Saturday the 25th, the first 1,500 fans through the Santander Stadium gates pick up a free magnet schedule courtesy of the law firm of Dale E. Anstein. Saturday also features mind-blowing Inside the Park fireworks after the game, presented by Flipside. Then we'll see you on Sunday the 25th for pregame autographs, catch on the field, and postgame Kids Run the Bases, presented by Logos Academy. Baseball is back in downtown York.
Sports Radio 1350 WOYK honors the Shipley Energy Student Athlete of the Week.
This week's Shipley Energy Boys Student Athlete of the Week is Hunter Betts of West York Lacrosse. Betts scored 5 goals and added 5 assists in an 18-9 win over Southwestern on Tuesday. He then scored 2 goals and dished out 4 assists in a 13-12 win over Central York on Thursday. And this week's Shipley Energy Girls Student Athlete of the Week is Olivia Etchison from York Suburban Softball. It was a strong week for Etchison as she picked up 3 wins in the pitcher circle. Etchison threw a 1-hitter in a 10-0 win over Eastern York on Monday, then followed that up with a 7-strikeout, 0-walk victory over Biglerville on Thursday. She then fired a 4-hit shutout and a 6-0 win over Fairfield to end the week of excellent pitching. For Sports Radio 1350 WOYK, I'm Ray Jensen.
Get your home ready for fall and winter and sign up for the Shipley Energy Protection Plan. For more information, visit shipleyenergy.com.
Hi, I'm Darrell Henry. Join Scott Geis and me every Monday at 4 for your College Spartan Sports Weekly, right here on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK. Each week, we bring you the latest in Spartan sports, featuring guest appearances from coaches and student athletes. York's home teams play on York's home for local sports. Spartan Sports Weekly, Mondays at 4 on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK. First in York, first in sports.
This is Bo Vaughn of the York Revolution. Catch the Revs all season right here on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK.
Here in the pilot episode of Revs Friday Night Live.
Nice fade out, Darrell.
Yeah, no, it's still playing.
Oh, okay.
It only cut it off in here. It sounded way worse in here than it actually was.
I don't know how we
Good
can
music.
Follow, I don't know how we can follow that ID.
Yeah. With Bo, actually, the way we should follow it is with the ones that Everett attempted earlier today.
We don't have that kind of time.
We'll hear that at some point.
This is only an hour-long show.
Yeah, but Ray jumped over to get on PA, so that's exciting. That means that the gates will be opening soon, and we're seeing more and more people come up the Brooks Robinson Plaza here on their way in here for opening night. So
it's 5:30.
It's getting there.
Do you know where your children are? Because if they're not inside the gates getting ready for the game, you're doing this parenting thing wrong.
Well put, Paul.
Yes.
That is Paul Braverman. Jim Seip joins us from the York Daily Record and York Sunday News here in the studio as well. Guys, what do you think of the Rick White conversation? Always interesting. A little peek at potential expansion and obviously his thoughts on the pace of play, which we will be embracing this season, and Major League Baseball will be as well. It's not just us.
You know what? It's always nice to hear Rick White talk about this because the national media has not given the Atlantic League the credit it deserves for these pace of play initiatives because it did originate here in the second half of our season last year. Major League Baseball took note. We didn't introduce a countdown clock. That was one thing they did on their own, but these other initiatives were tested in the Arizona Fall League, and then Major League Baseball adopted them this year. And Rick's a former MLB executive, and I'm glad he's making the media rounds, and this league will get credit for that. And Jim's here, and it's always nice to get a reporter's take on this. And the operative phrase when you talk about pace of play is, remember, it's not time of play, it's pace of play. When we say we've cut 8 minutes off of a typical game, people say, well, what difference does that make? Who cares about being at the ballpark for another 8 minutes? But a 2-1 game should not take 3 hours. That should be an exciting 2-hour and 30-minute game. An 8-7 game should absolutely be 3 hours, but you're going to have lead changes, home runs, and it's going to be entertaining throughout. So it's pace of play, not time of play, and no matter how long you're at the ballpark, it's keeping the game moving and entertaining regardless of the score. And I think that's really the point that that we need to make as a league, that it's about entertainment value and not time. And Jim, I know as a reporter, you like quick games when you're up against deadline, so feel free to disagree.
I really enjoy the 4-hour games. I think the league's missing out. Actually, I was really excited about that Bo Vaughn promo. That was absolutely stellar.
Should we just play it on a loop for the rest of the program?
I'd listen.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Jim, when you look at the pace of play thing, what jumps out at you? The way that the league has embraced it and the way that the game is moving and the powers that be are kind of addressing the fact that, not every fan maybe was totally enthralled with the 3-hour 2-1 game that had become commonplace.
It's difficult because this league, a lot of times the pitching depth isn't there that you might see in affiliated baseball. So, they don't have the, how do I word this, the consistency of the umpiring crew all the time that you might see in other leagues. But I think this goes back to opening day partners and their ability to kind of go after stuff that maybe not popular. I mean, they had a little person with the Revs in spring training a couple years ago, and a lot of people viewed that as kind of a joke or a sideshow. And then when pace of play, I think people kind of made the mistake, oh, well, this is a silly thing to go after. Baseball is baseball. It's one of those timeless sports, but they've actually gotten results with this. So this is important, I think, just because you've seen Major League Baseball kind of go through with it. And
yeah, we had somebody waving at the back of your head, Jim.
A fan.
That was Art. Yeah, he's one of our best.
It's blowing up. College game day, man. We're going to have crowds like that. I'm telling you.
But yeah, now it's and that was the reaction, Jim, when the whole Long Island Bridgeport exhibition game was announced. I mean, I had to stop and laugh a little bit at some of the overreaction to it because not everybody read the entire piece. It was an experiment that an author proposed for those two teams to do, and they were willing to do so. It was interesting. It was experimental. But, yeah, I mean, that was the initial reaction, and certainly I think pace of play initially when it was first brought up was kind of viewed like, uh-oh, what are they going to try to change here?
The austere rules that they played under in Long Island and Bridgeport, the 3 balls is a walk and a strikeout if you foul off a pitch with 2 strikes, for those who aren't familiar, it was a promotion. It was an experiment for an exhibition game. Like, everybody needs to relax. And they said that at the outset and said that there was no way that you were going to ever have rules like that in the regular season. The Atlantic League's about improving the game, not changing it. They had to do something to spice up their fan fest. We had a concert. They did that. Like, it's really not that big a deal. And people get panicky, and I'd like Jim's reaction on this. People get panicky when they hear pace of play because they're afraid that baseball is going to lose that intrinsic, relaxing, pastoral value, even though it's very competitive on the field. But there's a difference between changing the game and eliminating unnecessary jockstrap adjustments, guys stepping out of the box for 30 seconds between pitches.
What if it is a necessary adjustment?
If it's necessary, then fine. I just don't think all are necessary. There's a difference between cutting down on lollygagging and changing the fabric of the game. And in AA and AAA, they're experimenting with pitch clocks now. It becomes enforced in May. I like the fact that we're not doing pitch clocks in this league, because then I do think you lose a little bit of what makes baseball baseball. In football and basketball, you have the anxiety. You have the anxiety of a clock running down, which is fine for that sport. In baseball, you don't have that, and I think that's important to keep in baseball, and I don't like the anxiety that a pitch clock would bring for fans, and it's kind of unsettling. But having said that, there's no reason why you can't cut down time of game without that, simply by having guys keep 1 foot in the box and other alike rules that the Atlantic League pioneered and now have been adopted by Major League Baseball. And I think people panic about pace of play, but as long as you don't do anything drastic and just enforce the rules already on the books, which some of them are just old rules that need to be enforced, I think you're fine. I don't think you miss anything in the ballpark experience.
Baseball is one of those sports, I think, where everybody gets a little touchy if you change one small aspect of the game. We don't see this to this degree with basketball. We don't see it with football, right, with the adjustments they've made to the game. We see a little bit of a blowback now with the NFL, with trying to cut down on basically they're trying to improve living ability for these guys after they retire by cutting down on headshots and targeting. And you see a little bit of blowback, but baseball is one of those sports where nobody wants to touch anything. And if you look back, the NBA benefited greatly and was probably saved by the shot clock. Yeah. If not for those changes, nobody's talking about the NBA. Doesn't make that quantum leap that it made from, third or fourth pro sport to, one of the top sports in the country.
What was the first reaction when that came out?
I don't think it was embraced by everyone, but I think everybody, once they saw it implemented, kind of just took over because it sped up the game, And it's the same thing with what baseball's trying to do now. They're trying to get a better product on the field, and if you look at the goal, these type of rule adjustments could be what open up baseball again to a younger generation that's pretty much turned its back on the sport.
I like what you said there, and I totally agree about baseball being the most resistant to change. And you're right, every time something is proposed, people get the most touchy around baseball. I absolutely agree with that. But the hilarious thing is, if you looked at pro football 50 years ago and pro basketball 50 years ago, it would look very similar according to how the game is played as it does now. People act like baseball has never changed when a change is proposed. The Polo Grounds used to be 480 feet to center field. They played 8 fewer games a generation ago. They wind the balls tighter now. They doubled nearly the number of major league teams. I mean, baseball... Mound height. Yeah. Baseball has changed the most in the last generation or two than any of the 4 major professional sports in this country. Yet, you're right, people are still the touchiest about it when, in a way, it's the most parochial, but when you actually look at the history, it's actually been the most progressive at the same time. And, when people say baseball is dying, baseball is changing, and I agree that, they're losing younger fans, but what's hysterical is baseball can't be dying, because if it was, the attitude towards pace of play would be one of indifference, not you're going to ruin my ballpark experience with a pitch clock. So I don't think it's dying. That doesn't sound like people are concerned. If people are that concerned, it doesn't sound like it's dying to me.
Yeah. Well, no doubt. And we'll monitor how it plays out this season. I know the league's very positive about how it went last year and where we're headed now, and it is very much in tune with what MLB is doing. It's not really the only difference, guys, is the intentional walk thing. That's really the only thing that's vastly different from anything that MLB is doing with this.
And I don't like that, because there's still a potential for a pitcher to make a mistake. There's a great clip of Hank Aaron reaching out and, slapping a single on an intentional walk because a pitcher got careless. There's pros and cons. I think that's a con. I mean, let's face it. There's only so many intentional walks in a game. It doesn't take long to throw 4 pitches into a standing-up catcher. I mean, I don't quite understand that rule and how it's valued, but, whatever.
The one thing the Atlantic League did through this pace of play thing, which I think needs to be applauded, is right from the start, it wasn't an insulated league-mandated rule. They reached out to members of respected guys to get them on board.
Pat Gillick's on the committee. He's president of the Phillies.
So it wasn't one of those things where you could just poo-poo it as, well, this is just the Atlantic League being silly or crazy. They immediately had some clout, and I think that's one of the reasons why it was accepted.
It had credibility, and it's something that Rob Manfred and Bud Selig had been interested in, and they were more than happy to have Rick White, who is a former colleague of theirs in Major League Baseball's offices, institute this in the Atlantic League to have it be the guinea pig.
Yeah, that committee, you've got a former Major League manager in Cecil Cooper, you've got Pat Gillick, you've got a former Major League umpire in Jim Evans, you've got our manager, Mark Mason. They're all on that pace of play committee. I know I'm leaving a couple out, but you get opinions from very different roles throughout the game and definitely respected people. Guys, we'll talk a little bit about this year's team. And Jim, you had the story yesterday in the paper with Travis Garcia departing to Mexico. Brian Pounds becomes that much more valuable to this team. I know Mace, though, was really excited about him to begin with. You had a fairly lengthy chat with him yesterday about that at the team's final spring workout. How did you feel having seen the team off and on the past week? How did you feel about this group coming away? And any takeaways that you had, whether it was from that conversation regarding that big news or anything else in general from the last week?
Yeah, we've seen Atlantic League teams kind of handicapped in the past when they lose a player of Travis Garcia's stature. He left, I guess it was about 36 hours before opening day, and the Revs seemingly don't lose anything because they have Brian Pounds ready to step in. Now, the one part of that where it gets a little dicey is they now have, if they continue to have the opening day lineup they have out now, they'll only have 2 catchers as replacement players, I believe. So that they're a little thin in that regard.
Yeah, Pounds hit 283 with 16 homers and 70 RBI in 131 games in this league last year. So I don't think they lose a lot out of the lineup. What they lose is depth, big time.
Right. So they lose that ability to go to a position player to pinch hit, to come into the game. You're not going to do that if you only have catchers sitting on the bench. So that's a little dicey. I don't think they probably wanted to carry as many pitchers as they're going to carry for opening day, but that was kind of not something they could foresee. Travis, taking a job opportunity in the Mexican League.
Well, and tonight in our opening night lineup, another guy who you spent a good bit of time with the past week, Jim, that would be Desmond Henry, the youngest player on the roster. Tonight he makes the opening night start in right field at hitting 9th. Is he one of the guys that you're most interested to see this season and see what he does?
Absolutely. I think he's an interesting case. Not only is he young, which is interesting for this league because you have veteran pitchers in the Atlantic League, and with talking to Mace, he's always wary about bringing in young guys because veteran pitchers know how to find areas of weakness. Say you can't hit that inside pitch or you can't hit that away pitch, you're going to have guys who can command the ball, control the ball, and continually go to that pitch and retire the younger player unless he makes the adjustment. So that's the danger in this league. He's 21, he's young, so he could be, he could run into trouble there with the veteran pitchers. But at the same respect, here's a guy who's a 4th-round pick. We usually don't see guys that high draft pick sort of get run out of affiliated baseball. I think this would have only been his 5th season in affiliated baseball. This is another, Mark Mason made this move a similar type of move last year with Justin Green. Just looked on paper and thought this guy's deserves a shot, and ended up being what I would consider the player of the year. The league didn't see it that way. I did, but he made it, and he made a similar move with Desmond Henry. Here's a 4th-round draft pick. I'm going to give him a shot, and he makes the team and the opening day lineup.
As a footnote, Justin Green won the league batting title last year at 358. I haven't been in the league forever, but this is my 8th year in the league. He's the best player I've ever seen in this league, period. And that's a bold statement, but it's just fact. The fact that that's my opinion is fact.
But no, Desmond Henry, great story, comes out of Compton. If you've seen Boys in the Hood, if you've listened to NWA, you know all about Compton. He had a rough stretch there where as a 10 or 11-year-old had nowhere to go. Youth baseball coach Gerald Pickens took him in. Gerald Pickens is a youth baseball coach. He's also the high school coach at Centennial High in Compton, California. Took him in for a year and really, really helped him embrace the game of baseball and kind of a success story that we see him on the field.
I think with Desmond Henry, it's the allure of the unknown. Yes, he's a young guy. Yes, it might take him a little while to figure out this league, but I remember Scott Grimes came and won a Player of the Year in this league and was, the leadoff man for 3 very good Revolution teams. He had barely played above A-ball, just like Desmond Henry. He was a short season guy that was overlooked, probably released prematurely. He came in and dominated this league. Now, I'm not going to say that Henry's going to be the same way, but just as we talked about with Ian Thomas getting from York to the majors in 2 seasons, this is a league that can, on occasion, develop guys, even though that's not its stated purpose. And, maybe Desmond Henry will be overmatched and he'd be better off in the Frontier League and maybe would resurface in a higher level league like this a couple years down the road. Or maybe he'll be the biggest sleeper of camp and turn into an everyday guy for York. It's either one is possible. Yeah.
And it sounded to me, Jim, from reading your stuff, that it seems like Mace and his staff are genuinely looking forward to the opportunity to try to develop somebody that is young.
Right, and I asked Mace about that. Would you want to develop more guys? Knowing Mason's background, here's a college coach, here's a guy who was in the lower level of independent baseball, Frontier League, where they had to develop guys.
And that's a great reputation builder for the league to be able to do that, not just give veterans jobs, but, you talk about reputation for the league and here where, players would look to want to play.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think he would like to develop guys, but it's not one of those situations where he can bring in 5 guys like this and develop them. He just doesn't have the time. He said, this is a league where most of these guys have been there, done that. They've reached the pinnacle of the sport or have gotten close, and it's a matter of what can we do to tweak either mechanics or approach to get these guys back there. And Desmond Henry's a little bit of a different story, still looking for his best years ahead of him.
It's odd that we would spend a lot of time on a player without a lot of experience that's new to the club, that's not a familiar face. But I think he is not the best player on our club, but he's certainly the most intriguing. And his journey through this roster, I think, will be the most intriguing thing to watch. You're going to get a 305, 15 home run with a bunch of triples season from Eric Patterson. He's a steady guy.
Yeah, Jim, as you've watched the preseason, any other teams that have jumped out to you? We never know. We never know until we see them on the field. But any others? Is it the same old, Lancaster, Somerset in the mix again, or did anybody jump out?
Darrell, I'm really terrible at this. I believe in 2009, I thought York was going to win its first title. And that was the most brutal season ever.
A lot of people looked at that preseason roster that year of a team that went 57-83 and said, this team could play, the Mets and be successful. It did not turn out that way.
And I believe a manager told me last year of how bad Lancaster looked at the beginning of the year, and they went on to win a championship. So I'm not alone, I don't think, in being bad at trying to figure this league out. For one, I think who your team is in July goes a long way to of how you're going to do in the postseason and how you're going to finish the season, just because by that point you've lost those guys in May and you've had to replace some of your best players. And if you've been able to replace them, like York was last year with Justin Green picking him up in the middle of the year. I believe they picked up Logan Williamson in the middle of the year. Yeah. That was I believe he was an under 3 ERA guy.
He'll start on Sunday. Yep.
So July is really where I start to look at, okay, how do these guys kind of match up in a short series, first of all, and then can they get in the playoffs if they haven't won a first half title? But I believe Lancaster is looking at to be the third repeat winner in the league championship series, right? We've had York back-to-back, followed by Long Island. So if Lancaster's able to do it, they'd be the third repeat winner in a row.
Somerset did it before.
Right. It goes
so
back
they'd be
even
fourth.
deeper than that. Somerset 08-09, then York for 2 years, Long Island for 2 years, and Lancaster, they're going to have a chance to win the first half. I mean, Mace will have something to say about that.
Right. But Butch always puts a great product on the field. I don't ever remember a year where
he tailors his club to that ballpark. Guys that can hit and a fly ball in that ballpark to right field. We've all seen it. It's a Clipper special. I mean, we have Santander singles here where you hit it 315 feet and it's a single when it would have been out of Southern Maryland and they're short and left. And then in Lancaster, you got to pop fly. Grand slams there. So
yeah. We have that to look forward to on Thursday night, in fact.
Darrell
we'll be over there.
Darrell loves the discrepancy in ballpark dimensions in this league,
yeah. And what's interesting, we were at Southern Maryland for the preseason game on Tuesday. They've always built that park to the short left field, but Stan Clyburn, looking at his lineup, did the exact opposite. He had a ton of left-hand hitters, slap hitters in that order.
They have a big right field, might be a lot of doubles.
Maybe.
Maybe he isn't going to play for the home run. I mean, I think York's Park, off on a little bit of a tangent, I think this park plays about as fair as any in the league. Maybe Long Island's pretty fair.
Camden's fair, I think. It's huge.
I get
by this league's dimensions.
I get distracted by the bridge. I'm watching the pedestrians go by, runners, and things like that. I've never really seen a game there as many times as I've been there in person. There's too much stuff going on. Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, you can do this again on a Friday for us, and we'll let you go in there. And I don't know what's next. Press box meal.
We're going to start a fire in a burn barrel in the press box. Try to keep warm for this one.
Don't let me catch you closing those windows. It's opening day. We're outside.
Well, Jim, thanks a lot. We'll catch up with you. That's Jim Seip from the York Daily Record, York Sunday News. We'll take a quick break here on Revs Friday Night Live. Paul and I will wrap things up and get us ready for the opening night pregame coming up here on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK.
All the way to the floor.
Get ready for winter now and save big on your heating oil or propane costs. Call today to schedule your first fill, and don't forget to ask our energy advisors about the right money-saving plan or budget to fit your lifestyle. Lock in your rate and protect your price all winter. Our price-protected customers save an average of $325 per year. Visit ShipleyEnergy.com or call 855-4SHIPLEY to schedule your next heating oil or propane delivery. Shipley Energy, energy for life.
Want to learn to skate? Want to suit up and learn how to play some hockey? Come to the coolest place in town, York Ice Arena. Learn to skate programs are now available for all ages. For every skating ability, kids of all ages will learn how to feel comfortable on ice, how to stand, and perhaps most importantly, how to fall properly. Class levels range from beginner to freestyle, where you'll learn basic jumps, spins, and footwork. Classes are taught by York Ice Arena skating instructors from White Rose Figure Skating Club. No skates? No problem. Skate rental is included in your registration. Or get on the ice for our York Ice Arena hockey programs. York Ice Arena coaches will focus on teaching proper techniques needed for anyone interested in playing hockey. Rental equipment is available for beginning players, both boys and girls. So get on the ice. Learn to skate. Learn to play. Sign up now. Group skating lessons and beginners hockey programs are forming now. Plus, York City residents get a 50% discount. Register today. Go to YorkSkate.com and click on Program Info. York Ice Arena, the coolest place in town.
Revolution!
The high-flying artistry of ex-Pogo is returning to York Revolution games at Santander Stadium. This world-renowned extreme Pogo stunt team will be performing a 2-night show between innings as the Revolution take on the Blue Crabs Friday, May 8th and Saturday, May 9th. Check out video of ex-Pogo at YorkRevolution.com and buy tickets for May 8th and 9th anytime to see them live, starting at just $8. Home runs and Pogo backflips. Sounds like the perfect night out.
This is Anthony LaRue of the York Revolution. Catch the Revs all season right here on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK.
Revs Friday Night Live, wrapping up our first show here. Paul Braverman and Darrell Henry bringing you to the finish line before Darrell's pregame at 6:10. Revs and Ducks after 6:30 p.m. First pitch tonight on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK. Well, Darrell, we got through the first show unscathed. We'll do it again on our second Friday night home game, which will be May 8th against the Blue Crabs. And wrapping it up here with some final thoughts. Most importantly, the Revs are 5-3 all-time in season openers, so that bodes well. And I believe in this stadium they are 3-1, 4-1 in home openers.
You know
when
what?
they
I just
open the
did
season,
the notes.
when
I
they
have them
open
right
the
here.
season at home, that is.
When they open at home, let's get it accurate. My head's spinning as I was doing this earlier. Opening night, the Revs are 5-3, 3-1 at home.
Yeah.
All time in home openers, wherever it falls in the schedule, only 4-4. So it's a better thing to start right off the bat at home. At least history would tell us that.
I think so. Sean Hill getting the start for the Revolution tonight against John Brownell, who led the Atlantic League in strikeouts last season. Brownell did. Sean Hill was last with the Revs in 2012. This will be his first opening day start for the club. The Canadian is one of only 4 players to play in the majors for the Expos and Blue Jays, so that's a cool footnote. Matt Stairs, Rob Ducey, and a very Canadian name, Dennis Boucher, are the others. So good pitching matchup.
Was it Denis or was it Dennis?
I don't know, Darrell. It was Dennis until you questioned me on it.
I really don't know, but yeah.
So, good pitching matchup, as teams are wont to do on opening day. And Sean Hill, 3 seasons ago, was the very first Rev alum to earn a win in a major league game when he beat Andy Pettitte and the Yankees on September 29th, 2012 in Toronto. And he began that season with the York Revolution and set the all-time franchise scoreless inning streak record at 27 2/3 before the Blue Jays picked him up. And he returned to his home province team and then made some Revolution history in the majors there. So intriguing guy to have on the mound a few years later, but he can still bring it. He's bounced around AAA the last couple of years. He was with the Tigers in Toledo and with the White Sox in Charlotte, and now he's back with the Revs, and excited to have him back.
Great choice for opening night, and he would have been here last year had Toronto not signed him right before he arrived here. No, it was a little bit before that. It was late March.
He's had 3 or 4 separate stints with the Blue Jays now. Yeah. They never lose his numbers. So
he had signed. We had announced his signing, and then about a day later, they had signed him. But yeah, it's a very intriguing matchup tonight. Paul, we'll look forward to doing this again here in a couple of weeks. This has been a nice way to lead into our season opener.
Yeah, it has been, and thanks for allowing me to infiltrate your space here, and I suppose I'll do that again, and I'll see you in the 3rd inning.
Yeah, you got it. This has been our first edition of Revs Friday Night Live. We've got state news from Radio PA, our stock report, national news coming up, and then we're back on the other side of the break for the Revs pregame for opening night 2015. We'll be back. We'll relocate to the press box. We'll have the live pregame ceremonies, the player intros, and all of that to come. Stay tuned here on Sports Radio 1350 WOYK.